Well, thank you, Jeannie, for that introduction. And good afternoon, Women in Investment Management for the CFA Institute. It is sincerely an honor to be here, and I thank Julie and the rest of the committee for inviting me here because, as they know, and Jeannie certainly knows because she's heard me say this over and over, there are very few things, ladies, very few things that I enjoy more than talking about Carla's pearls, as I like to call them, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls, after being a woman on Wall Street this summer for 28 years. Yeah. I dare say that I have learned a few things about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And that's really what the pearls are all about. As you've heard from Jeannie, I had the privilege of writing my first book, Expect to Win, in 2009. And frankly, I wrote that book because I had something to say. When I walked out of the lauded halls of Harvard undergrad and Harvard Business School, I embraced this concept of a meritocracy. Success was merely a function of how smart you were and how hard you worked. Yet, when I started my career, it didn't quite work out that way. You see, I thought I was pretty smart, as you've heard, magna cum laude, Harvard undergrad, second-year honors, Harvard Business School. Pretty smart, huh? I'm from the South, so I knew there were very few of those boys in the Northeast that could outwork me. Yet, that combination did not equal maximizing my success. So I had to ask myself, what's missing in this success equation? And being the anal person that I am, I went to the dictionary and I looked up the word meritocracy. And I don't care whose dictionary you go to, if you look up the word meritocracy, you will see the word objective somewhere in that definition. Yet, in all of our evaluative equations, there is a human element. And if there is a human element, by definition, it is subjective. So it cannot be 100% meritocratic. So what are some of those other things that really inform your success equation? And that's really what the pearls are all about. And as Jeannie said, I love, love, love questions. So I'm going to go through a few of these pearls so that we can maximize our time together with Q&A. And if your boss happens to be in the room and you don't want the question ascribed to you, just say, I had a friend that had this particular issue, and then we can take it from there. So do we have a deal? Okay, the first pearl, and it is the most important thing that I learned after 2.5 decades on the street. And every time I have the privilege and the honor of speaking in front of a group of people, if they haven't heard me speak before, I always talk about this pearl because it was indeed the most important thing that I learned after 2.5 decades on the street. And that is perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. Yes, the reality of how smart you are has something to do with your success equation. The reality of how hard you work has something to do with your success equation. But a very big component of your success equation is the perception that the marketplace has about you. What lens are they looking through when they are looking at you? And it's important that you understand how people are perceiving you, but more importantly, you should understand the adjectives. It is imperative that you understand the adjectives that are associated with success for the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. If you don't understand those adjectives, you can work really hard, but you won't maximize your success in that role, because you're working in a way that is inconsistent with the way they are thinking about success. If you would like to manage a large group of people, but you are not perceived as being motivational, inspirational, or organized, it doesn't matter that you can do it. Doesn't even matter that you did do it. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. If you would like to manage a large P&L, but you are not perceived as being analytical, quantitative, or strategic, doesn't matter that you can, doesn't even matter that you did. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. Now, people say to me all the time, but wait a minute, Carla, I am who I am. I can't make anybody think about me in a certain way. If you remember nothing else about our time together this afternoon, remember that you can train people to think about you in the way that you want them to think about you. And how do you do that? You pick 3 adjectives that you would like people to use to describe you when you are not in the room. And why do I say when you're not in the room? It's because all of the important decisions about your career will be made when you are not in the room. Compensation decisions will be made when you are not in the room. Promotion decisions will be made when you are not in the room. And new assignments will be given out when you are not in the room. So how do you want people to describe you when you are not in the room? Pick 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are, because I'm a big fan of the authenticity point. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. It is your distinct competitive advantage, and we'll talk about that today. Pick 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are. However, pick 3 adjectives that are also valued in your organization. And if you don't know by now what's valued in your organization, you can go to the organization's website. There isn't an organization today that doesn't describe itself or its values on the website. And if they don't, think about what they told you when they hired you. Oh, Julie, we hired you for the following 2 reasons. Oh, Susan, you beat out those 2 candidates for these 3 reasons. They told you then what they valued about you. So the trick is to continue to improve upon that which they value. The 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are, the 3 adjectives that are valued in your organization, where they intersect is how you must behave consistently if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way. It is simply consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And my big aha happened 5 to 6 years into my career. I had a very senior managing director say to me, you know, you're smart, you work hard, but I don't think you're tough enough for this business. Now, my first reaction, ladies and gentlemen, was what is he smoking? You can call Carla Harris a lot of things, but ain't tough ain't one of them. But then I said, wait a minute, suppose this guy is not pulling my leg. Suppose he really doesn't think that I'm tough enough for this business. And heaven forbid, suppose the rest of the organization doesn't think that I'm tough enough for this business. And as you might imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the last thing that you want to be thought of as a woman and a woman on Wall Street is not tough. And oh, by the way, authentically, that is who I am. So the fact that he was questioning whether or not I was tough enough was a wake-up call to me that the real Carla Harris was no longer walking into Morgan Stanley. Somewhere I'd lost my voice. Somewhere I'd lost my confidence. And it was creating a competitive disadvantage for me. So after I got that feedback, I said, okay, I know what I'll do. For the next 90 days, I decided I would walk tough, talk tough, eat tough, drink tough, use tough in my language, because it's important that if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way, you must have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And you must use this language in your environment, particularly when you are talking about yourself. So I had a reputation of being very good at critiquing management presentations, so much so that before we would take a company on the road for a multi-billion-dollar IPO or a multi-hundred-million-dollar common stock transaction, my colleagues would often ask me to come into the room, listen to that CEO's presentation, and give that CEO some feedback, even when it was not my deal. So the next time someone asked me to do that, after I'd gotten that feedback, I said, wait a minute, tell me a little bit about this CEO. Is this guy sensitive? Does he have a thin skin? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because you know I'm tough. And I kept using that language over and over and over to describe myself. And sure enough, in about 90 days, it worked. I had a team of people coming to see me. They didn't know I was behind them. And the VP was beating up the poor associate. Do you have the backup analysis? Do you have the signature analysis? We're going to see Carla Harris, and you know she's so tough. So they will start to think about you in that way, ladies, if you have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. But it is imperative that you understand the adjectives that are associated with success for the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. If you are in a finance role, people better describe you as analytical, quantitative. If you're in a marketing role, they better say that you are an out-of-the-box thinker, that you are creative. If you're in a sales role, they better say you are commercial, you are relationship oriented. And oh, by the way, Every day that you choose to exercise your power to go into your seat, you should know exactly what you're playing for. It should never be a mystery as to what it takes to get to the next pay level or what it takes to get to the next promotion. But we generally will go in there and put our heads down and say, I'm going to work really hard. They'll see that I'm focused and I'm loyal and that I'm hardworking, and I'll be rewarded accordingly. Everything will work out. But it doesn't work that way. Because if you're working in a way that is inconsistent with the way they're thinking about success, you will not maximize your success in that role. Or said differently, if you offer that which is not of value, you will not be rewarded. So whenever you're going into a new situation, know what you're playing for. If you know what you're playing for, it will keep you motivated and inspired to deliver excellence every day. But if you don't know what you're playing for, very easy to get distracted by what I like to call outside atmospheric disturbances, what's going on in the broader economy, or even what's going on in your internal political economy. So anytime that you're going to a new firm, or you're going to a new department, or even working for a new boss or a new client, always take the time to ask the question, what does success look like on this project? Or what does success look like in this role? Or better yet, what needs to happen, Jim, in order for you to say, I knocked the cover off the ball and the ball out of the park? If Jim says, Mary, you do the following 5 things, and I will consider that an out-of-the-box performance. Now, Mary, you know exactly what you're playing for. You know how to maximize your success in that role. But more importantly, if Jim says, I don't know, Mary, you always do a good job, just do what you always do. Mary, note to self, San Antonio, we have a problem. Because if Jim can't tell you what success looks like, you will never maximize your success in that role. Because success is always shifting. And that will make your performance vulnerable to outside influences on Jim. So if Jim can't tell you what success looks like, you should say, Jim, you're not sure what success looks like in this role? I have a pretty good idea. Give me 10 minutes. Let me walk you through it. You tell me what you like and what you don't like. And after those 10 minutes, Mary, now you know exactly what you're playing for. You know how to maximize your success in that role. The second pearl that I'd like to leave you with tonight is if you consider yourself a leader in the 21st century, you must be comfortable taking risks. You must be comfortable taking risks. Now, I know you all know about taking risks because you're all investment managers, but I mean personal risk. You must be comfortable. In my new book, I talk about the fact that the millennials will have an opportunity to have 4 to 5 different careers, not jobs, before they end their professional journey. And I mentor and tell them they should be thinking about 6 to 7 modules of 5. But if you are a boomer, seasoned, not old, seasoned like me, I say you must be thinking about Me 2.0 every 3 to 5 years. Every 3 to 5 years. You must be comfortable taking risks. 15 years ago, you could create a competitive differential for yourself if you had information that other people didn't have. But today, information is a commodity. So the way you differentiate yourself in any environment is to show that you're comfortable taking risks, because it says to the marketplace that you are comfortable with change. And change is one guarantee that you will have in your life. But as I've traveled around, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years in this country, all I've heard from people is, oh, don't take any risks. Keep your head down. Don't rock the boat. 8% unemployment, now 5.3% unemployment. We're having our second reduction in force. We're having our fourth restructuring. Just keep your head down. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that keeping your head down will not keep you from getting shot. So as I like to say, you might as well keep your head up so you can see the bullet coming. No. I say that in jest because what I'm really trying to tell you is that whenever we are in tough economic environments and everybody else is besieged with fear and everybody else is ducking, you have clear vision. You have clear vision to see the opportunities. It's exactly those kinds of environments where you can markedly accelerate your success. It is not the time to keep your head down, because the issue with keeping your head down is that you submerge your voice. And your voice is at the heart of your power. And when you submerge your voice, you become irrelevant. And when you become irrelevant, you put a big target on the front and a big target on the back. Now's the time to say, oh, I know that we're trying to preserve our profitability. I have 2 ideas about how we should do that. I know that we're trying to cut costs. I have 3 thoughts about that. I know we now have 2 people doing the same job that 8 people were doing. That sounds like a process redesign. I'd like to take that on. Translation to management, wow, she's not worried about the layoffs. She's not worried about losing her job. She's trying to put points on the board. She's trying to move the ball down the field. She is a keeper. But when I ask myself why we don't take more risks, the only thing I can come up with is that we're scared. We're just scared. It's fear. And hear me clearly. Fear has no place in your success equation. Fear has no place in your success equation. Anytime you approach anything in your life, personally or professionally, from a position of fear, you will always underpenetrate that opportunity. And anytime I feel it creeping up the back of my neck, I remind myself of that old saying, fear is just false evidence of things appearing real. It's really not there. Because what's the worst that can happen if you take a risk and it doesn't work out? So you fail. But guess what? Failure always brings you a gift. And that gift is called experience. Now you know how to do it better. Now you know how to do it differently. Now you know how to do it successfully. At the margin, it is always worth taking the risk. And in these kinds of environments, many of us will be shown new opportunities. And if you're not sure whether or not you should take the risk on the new opportunity, ask yourself 3 questions. Will the new thing give you skills and experiences that you would not get if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months? Second question, will the new thing expose you to people, relationships, and networks that you would not get if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months? Third question, will the new thing create new branches on your personal decision tree of opportunity? I.e., you could go off and do some other things that you wouldn't have been able to do if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months. If the answer to all 3 of those questions is yes, you should absolutely take the risk. The third pearl that I want to leave you with is the authenticity pearl. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. It is your distinct competitive advantage. And the day that you got your opportunity, somebody else didn't get the job. So the last thing you should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. Anytime that you are trying to speak or behave in a way that is inauthentic to who you really are, you will create a competitive disadvantage for yourself because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your client is saying, yet is not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to demonstrate that quick twitch response. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with that person on the other side of the table. As quiet as it's kept, ladies and gentlemen, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their own skin, they will gravitate towards you. They want some of that. If your success, like mine, depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self to the table. When you bring your authentic self to the table, people will trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. This was a very interesting lesson for me to learn. As you've heard from Jeannie, I am a singer. I've done 3 CDs, 4 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall. But when I started in this business, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, analytical, quantitative investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. Didn't want anybody to talk about that until I saw the client reaction. My colleagues would often go into the pitch and say, oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker. But what you really ought to know about Carla, she's an amazing gospel singer. She's done CDs, sung at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, blah, blah, blah. And I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw that reaction. Oh, you're a singer. Oh, I so admire people who can sing. And I personally love to sing, but my family will only let me sing in the shower. And maybe you could talk to my daughter about how she can integrate her love of the arts and her academics and blah, blah, blah. And there we were having a 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me, ladies? the meeting before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in the room with Carla Harris, the banker. I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO that afternoon. So now whenever I go into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior. I bring Carla Harris, the investment manager. I bring Carla Harris, the speaker. Carla Harris, the writer. Carla Harris, the football fan. Carla Harris, the golfer. I bring all those Carlas to the table because I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and will allow me to own that relationship in a proprietary way. Quick story, 2006, the IPO that everybody wanted was the Burger King IPO. Every firm on the street wanted this IPO because there had not been a quick service restaurant IPO of size in easily a decade. And this one was owned by 3 prestigious financial sponsors. So you all know it wasn't just about the IPO, it was about all the follow-on offerings as these guys sold down their positions. So everybody wanted this deal. It's our turn, we're in Miami, I'm over in the corner getting a cup of coffee with the CEO, and I said, hey, John, are you guys gonna bring back the Have It Your Way jingle? He said, Carla, funny you should ask. We've done our homework and we have found that that is the most successful jingle in Burger King's history. So we're working out how we can portray it more prominently in our marketing. I said, oh, cool. Are you guys gonna bring back both verses of the jingle? He said, Carla, there was only one verse of the jingle. I said, John, trust me, I'm the original hamburger queen. There were 2 verses to the jingle. He said, Carla, there was only one. I said, hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us all. We ask that you let us serve it your way. But if you want some special thing, it won't take long for us to swing it. When you come to Burger King, you can have it your way. He said, now I don't need to tell y'all Morgan Stanley won lead left on that IPO, right? Okay. If I will tell you, more importantly, it created a proprietary, trusted relationship because long after that deal was over, he'd call me and say, we're about to make this announcement to the street, and I trust your judgment, and I'd like to understand whether you think we ought to say it differently or how we should juxtaposition the arguments. A trusted advisor relationship because I had the courage to bring my authentic self to the table. Ladies, your authenticity is at the heart of your power. And it is at the heart of powerful, impactful, influential leadership. When you bring your authenticity to the table, you create a dynamic where you can make a pitch, a conversation. And anytime you can make a pitch, a conversation, you have just about achieved the sale. And the last 2 pearls that I want to leave you with are from Strategize to Win. There are 2 types of currency in any environment: performance currency and relationship currency. But I'd like you to think to yourself that a dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar. Performance currency is worth about $1.50 in the first 3 to 4 years of your career. And performance currency is generated by your delivering that which was asked and a little bit more. The easiest way to think about it is under promise and over deliver. Every time you underpromise and overdeliver, you will generate performance currency. It is just like the stock market. Anytime a company says to the street that they will deliver 25 cents a share and that company delivers 40 cents a share, that stock goes up every single time, and so will yours. Performance currency is valuable for 3 reasons very early on. Number 1, it will get you noticed. It will create that reputation. Number 2, it will get you paid and promoted. And number 3, it may even attract a sponsor. But after about 3 to 4 years in the same environment, that performance currency starts to experience diminishing marginal returns. That $1.50 marches back down to the dollar. Why? Because now it is assumed that you will always deliver an outstanding and excellent product because you have created a new standard. So there is no premium associated with your delivery. And at that time, you should be over-focusing, frankly, on the relationship currency. It is indeed the more valuable currency. And relationship currency is worth about $2.25, and it never experiences any diminishing marginal returns. Relationship currency is generated by the investments that you make in the people in your environment. the relationships that you have. At a minimum, you should have a relationship with every seat that touches your seat. None of us work in a silo anymore. We get work from someplace, somebody. We then work on it, and then we pass it along to a client or someone else. We are all interdependent. So you must invest in the people in your environment. And the reason that you must invest is that your ability to ascend will be a function of somebody's judgment. Judgment about whether or not you're ready. Judgment about whether or not the team will follow you. Judgment about whether or not you will be successful. And ladies and gentlemen, judgments are directly influenced by relationships. Directly influenced by relationships. If I know Jill and I know Jane, and they both want to become managing directors, but I have a relationship with Jane, I'm going to use my currency with her behind closed doors as a sponsor every single time. Why? Because of that relationship, I perceive that I'll be able to pull her to the side if things go awry and say, Jane, you need to do the following 3 things in order to make sure that you're successful. I perceive that I can provide air cover for her. And because of the relationship, I perceive that I can influence the way my coworkers are viewing her as she's on her way to prosecuting that endeavor. The easiest way to generate that relationship currency is the same way that you create relationships in your personal life. Frequency of touch. Frequency of touch. If you think about the person that you are close to, especially think about somebody from college or graduate school. How did you get close to that person? Maybe you stood in the registration line together. Maybe you were also going to be economics majors together and you were taking a class and you said, save me a seat. Oh, are you going to that party? Let's walk over together. Oh, save me a seat in the dining hall. It was frequency of touch. It's the same way in your professional environment. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, I'm not going to play the politics. Oh, I'm not going to do that relationship thing. I'm just going to keep my head down and do my work, and I will let my work speak for me. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The work does not speak. You must put your work in context in your environment. And the only way that you put it in context is through the relationships that you have. Through those relationships. It is so important that you build those relationships, especially if you want to lead in your environment. Because if people won't follow you, how can you lead? And when I'm trying to build a relationship, especially with a client, I always think about being of service. I never think about what I want to get out of them. The first thing I think about is how can I be of service? Because I like to create an imbalance of trade. You all know what an imbalance of trade is. I try to figure out what are the 4 things that I can do for that client before I ever make an ask. Oh, would it be helpful to you if I made this introduction? Would it be helpful if I found that information for you? Oh, you need X? Let me see if I can get that for you without ever asking for anything. I try to do it 4 times. Because after the 4th time, when I decide to ask for something, you cannot turn me down. You will say, well, she did this, and she did that. Well, maybe I don't want to give them all of the business, but I'll split it with someone. And I'll take that split all day long, because once I get my foot in the door, I can wiggle those hips the rest of the way. But it's important that you at least get the shot, right? And if you have invested in that relationship, it will reap returns. As I close, I tell you that success does not just happen. You must be intentional. You must be intentional about your communications. You don't ask, you don't get. There is only one person that has responsibility for your career, and that is you. So you must ask for the compensation, you must ask for the promotion, and you must be intentional about it. You must be intentional about your performance. Set up the performance in a way that you will be able to generate performance currency. Never go into a client situation thinking that you know what success looks like. Always make sure you get them to define it so you can underpromise and overdeliver. And lastly, you must be intentional about your relationships. Invest in those relationships. You must have a sponsor, which is the person that is carrying your paper into the room. It's the person that behind closed doors will use their capital on your behalf, very different than a mentor. If you are intentional, you will have an opportunity to maximize your success. You must expect and strategize to win. I thank you, and the floor is now yours. Okay, questions?
Carla, I'm gonna start with the first question. Thank you, and then we'll go around the room and also take some questions from the out of the room audience. Let me ask you. You said that we must take risk, and I've read lots of studies, seen lots of analysis that men and women assess risk differently. In fact, that even some studies suggest that women are more risk adverse. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I would tell you that I've seen those studies as well, and I don't think women are more risk averse. I mean, I think that we tend to be careful because, frankly, we don't like to lose, right? So we assess risk a little bit differently to make sure that, again, we can deliver a win, but I don't think that we're risk averse at all. Now, I think, when it comes to if a woman is sort of the head of household and she has a lot of people depending on her, again, I think her thought process is going to be a careful one because there are a lot of people that are depending on her. But at the end of the day, she will take those risks, especially if there's an opportunity for gain. And when it comes to managing client assets, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Carla, could you tell us?
No, go ahead in the orange and I'll come to the black. Yes, okay.
Carla, could you tell us about your career path and how you ended up in investment banking?
Yes, absolutely. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I didn't know anything about finance at all when I first went to Harvard. And I thought I was going to be a lawyer because if you're growing up African American in the South in the 60s and 70s and you were smart, there was sort of 3 lanes that people would push you into. Number 1, to be a teacher. Number 2, to be a nurse or a doctor. And number 3, to be a lawyer. And I loved Perry Mason. I know I'm dating myself. And so, everyone said to me, you ought to be a lawyer, you ought to be a lawyer. So that's what I went to Harvard thinking I was going to do, eventually go to Harvard Law School, and that was it. But my colleagues entered this program called the SEO program, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. They had just started a new program where they were trying to get talented kids of color from some of the Ivy League schools to go to Wall Street in hopes that Wall Street would be interested in them and the kids would be interested in Wall Street for these analyst programs which had just started in the summer, I think, of 1980-81. Because remember, the top business schools said, we don't want to take people directly from college anymore. We want people to have work experience. So Wall Street responded and created these 2-year analyst programs. So Mike Oshowitz, who was at SEO at the time, had this brilliant idea saying, hey, this is an opportunity to maybe change the face of Wall Street. Let me see if I can put together these programs and create this opportunity over the summer. And I was in the program the summer of 1982, and that was the summer that changed the trajectory of my life. Because all of a sudden, the things that I thought I found in the law were actually found in business. I said, okay, I want to have a lot of responsibility very early on. You get a lot of responsibility in finance very early on. Number 2, I want an opportunity to use my analytical and quantitative skills. Clearly you can do that. I always wanted to be somebody who called the shots. And if you're the person, especially on the banking side, you call the shots, because I didn't know about investment management at the time. And then lastly, I wanted a lifestyle where I would have compensation that would afford me a certain lifestyle, if you will. And certainly I could find that in finance. So I was hooked. And that's when I also, I think, became an adrenaline junkie. I liked the pace. I loved doing all-nighters, especially, if it meant that there was going to be some big outcome and I'd be able to see that in the paper. I just loved it. And that was all she wrote. Yes, I'm going to take the lady in the black, then I'm going to come here. Yes.
Thanks. I work for a large firm as well, and as I've risen up in the ranks, it seems to get lonelier the higher up you get in terms of support systems around. Mm-hmm. And I was speaking to another woman here today about this as well. She had the same experience. At times we would get, and I know I got advice to leave the big firm, start your own thing, join a smaller firm. And I was just curious if you had any points like that in your career that were kind of low points that you went through, and what was that low point, and what did you do to kind of keep going and keep changing the big firm? Yes,
and I'll tell you, my low points weren't because I felt lonely necessarily, because, again, I'm used to being the only, being the first, so that wasn't anything that was ever foreign to me at all. But let me just say something about the support systems, but I will tell you about a low time. The support systems are all about what you create. And don't ever think that your support systems need to be someone who's on your level. I mentor a lot of people, and I cannot tell you how much inspiration and support I get from the junior people that I pour into. right? Because they're looking at me and they are rooting for me, saying, go get them. And when they come to my office and I'm sitting there saying, girl, hang in there, you can do this, I did it, you can do this. Then when I'm feeling low, if I look at them, I'm like, well, I can't go whimpering around. I just told that girl to stand up, girl, stand up. So what am I doing, right? So if nothing else, it keeps me honest about drinking my own Kool-Aid, right? So you'd be surprised that your support system doesn't necessarily it's nice if it's your peers, but you may not always get that from the boys. So you have to construct that which is going to keep you fueled up all the time. And a lot of my support sometimes came externally. The other thing I'm going to tell you about that, I write in both books about being the architect of your own agenda. And that is, know why you are sitting in the seat that you're sitting in and why you're in the house that you are in. And if you know why you're in the seat and why you're in the house, then when you get to those low points, you can go back to your personal agenda and you can say, okay, why am I in this seat? I wanted to get the following 5 things. Have I gotten them? If I've gotten them, then maybe my problem and why I'm feeling this way is that it's time to change the seat. But if there's still things in that seat that you want, that's not your problem. Then you start examining the house and you say, do I still like the house? Do I like the people? Do I like the career trajectory? Do I like the platform? Do I have a voice? Am I respected here? If the answer is no, then now you know the answer to your problem. You're in the right job, but it's time to change the house. But if the answer is yes, you're in the right seat, you're in the right house, now you know how to diagnose the issue. The issue then is that it's a person. And studies say that most women leave organizations because of a person. And the thing to remind yourself at that point is there's not a person born that you can't get around, right? You start building your networks and your relationships around so that the person that's causing you to feel that way becomes the outlier, right? And then you move on with the rest of your agenda, but never let that one person or even 2 cause you to abandon your agenda if everything else fits on why you're in that seat and why you're in that house. Now, I remember the time early on in my career where I was feeling really low. I mean, my confidence was so busted that if you had said, your name is Carla Harris, I would have said, are you sure? I mean, I was really lower than low. And I was working for somebody who turned out not to be very good. In fact, that person was very insecure. And an insecure boss is the worst person you could possibly work for. Oh, I see all those amens in the room, huh? Okay. Is the worst person that you can work for because they can't teach you anything because generally they're not very good. And the one thing that an insecure person is deathly afraid of, and that is getting found out. So the smarter you are and the more assertive you are, the more afraid of you they are. And they start doing everything to push you out, giving you assignments that don't matter, having you run it all around, having you put together back then really thick books so that you can stay away from them. And I remember one day I was feeling so terrible. I called my girlfriend at home, my best friend at home, and I called to talk to her. And her mother picked up the phone. She wasn't there. And I grew up with her. And Ms. Breaker said, so she said, baby, Cheryl's not here. And then she said, Carla, what's wrong? And I said, all it takes is somebody's mama saying, what's wrong? And it's over for you. And I just completely melted down. And she said, Carla, I have 2 things to tell you. Psalm 91, Psalm 4. Click. And I didn't know what to do with that, but Ms. Breaker said it, so I was gonna do it. So every morning, every night, I kept reading Psalm 91, Psalm 4. And over time, and not very long, about a month and a half, I started to have this amazing clarity. Because all of a sudden, I was thinking it was me. This person made me feel like I was dumb, that I shouldn't be there. And, did they not teach you that at Harvard Business School? What is wrong with you? That's how I was feeling. And all of a sudden, it get really clear that I wasn't the problem. I had graduated second-year honors from Harvard Business School. I had done a thesis at Harvard that had a summa and a magna that was sitting in Harvard archives that was highly econometric. So clearly, I could do numbers, right? So all of a sudden, I started thinking about my truths and not the distraction. And the person was a distraction. And then, little by little, I started to build my confidence back up. And then I got the courage to make sure that I asked not to work with that person. And then I found out something that was very interesting. I was so green when I started on Wall Street. I was greener than her jacket, right? And the reason I kept working for this person was because all my peers were refusing to do so. And I didn't even know that I had the power to say no. So the next time the assignments associate said, got a project for you and it's with this person, I said, oh no. And they're like, well, what do you mean? You started to give me all this. I said, oh no. I'm not working with that person. Now, you know, if you're trying to screw around with me, this is not the setting. We can find another setting because this is not right. This doesn't work, right? And sure enough, I didn't work for the person anymore. And somebody else got assigned and completely exposed it. So I learned very valuable lessons from that. And I write about it clearly and expect to win. Yeah. But that was a low point. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You made a comment about being your authentic self, and that sometimes that authentic self may not jive with the boss or your firm and their values. And I'm just curious, have you actually been in that environment yourself, and did you find yourself having to try to plow through it or look elsewhere?
Yes.
And perhaps you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I believe the authenticity starts with your choice, right? You have to be really authentic about why you're going to that seat and why you're going to that house. So I can look you in the eye and tell you that I have never had any conflicts with my authentic self in my firm, which is why I've been at one firm since I graduated from Harvard Business School. And one of the reasons, frankly, that I chose Morgan Stanley was because when I was meeting people there, even during that summer internship, now I wasn't at Morgan Stanley when I was in that summer internship. I was at a firm then called Blythe Eastman Payne Weber. But if you were in the program, you had an opportunity to visit all of the other firms that participated in the program. And it struck me at that time that everybody I met at Morgan Stanley was a little different than the last person I met. So translation in my green 19-year-old mind was, oh, there's a lot of different equations that equal success here. Surely that is one for me. And I kept that in the back of my mind. So fast forward 5 years later, when I'm coming out of Harvard Business School, it was at the top of my list because I felt like I could authentically be Carla. And all of us, you know, are multifaceted in your authenticity. And you have to feel comfortable in that environment that if any part of you, you know, comes out, it's going to be okay. And there were other firms, frankly, where I got offers, but I felt like this the whole time. You know, I felt like I was on, and if I said something that was inconsistent with the way they said things, that was going to be the death of me. And I'm from the South. So every now and then a honey's gonna roll out of my mouth. And I wanted to be in a place where if I called the CEO honey, they wouldn't say, oh, she called the CEO honey, right? And I will tell you that's it's your competitive edge. I cannot tell you, if there's no other pearl that you all remember that's the heart of your power. I mean, that authenticity. I remember trying to give presentations the way my male colleagues were giving the presentations because I thought, okay, that's the way you're supposed to do it. If we lose this piece of business, I don't want anybody to say it's because Carla didn't make that point. She didn't order the competitive parameters that way. So I would, in the beginning, write down exactly what they were saying, how they said it, and when it was time for me to present, I would present it exactly that way. Well, over time, the feedback that came back was, you know, her presentations are flat. They don't land with the client. She can't really, you know, penetrate the client thought. And I thought, but I'm saying exactly what he said, and I'm saying it exactly how he said it, right? And then, at my wit's end, I said, well, you know what? I might as well just be Carla. I have nothing to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is a dangerous animal. So I said, and that's when I started giving the pitch my way. And if I wanted to roll in a honey, I rolled in a honey. And it was immediate connection. That's when I got it. I said, uh-huh. And that's why I made the comment that I made to you guys earlier. Anytime you can take a pitch and make it a conversation, you have achieved the sale. Yes, ma'am.
Let's just go ahead and talk about perception and gender. And Harvard has done some excellent work about leadership characteristics and how they're perceived differently based on the gender of the person leading and the gender of the person perceiving. Mm-hmm. Is that overblown, or how do you address that?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I do think it's a little bit overblown. I I really think that the key to not falling into that is to not pick up somebody else's baggage, right? If you walk into a situation thinking that somebody's thinking that you're this because you're a woman, or in my case, because you're a woman and you're an African American, you are not free to deliver excellence because you're thinking about what they must be thinking. And then you may even unconsciously start to overcompensate. So you're doing things that are away from connecting to that person directly. So I always say, don't pick up other people's baggage. Baggage is heavy. It will create a competitive disadvantage. So I don't go into anything thinking that they're thinking in any kind of way. Now, if somebody starts behaving in a way where it looks like they may have a bias, then that's when I move in for the kill, right? I like to say I use the Diana Ross strategy of relationship management. I'm gonna make you love me. Ooh, yes, I will. Yes, I will. So for me, I'm negatively motivated. So when you tell me I can't do something, I'm all over it. So if I feel like somebody's resisting, then I'm gonna sort of figure out what this point of resistance is, right? And use it as an opportunity to educate. So I'm gonna look him straight in the eye. I'm even gonna get in his personal space. I'm gonna make him stand back if he gets, but I'm gonna make sure that they understand that I'm there to deliver excellence. And if you haven't seen anybody that looks like me that's gonna give you the best, you're gonna see that now. And it is my hope that the next time you see somebody that looks like me, that they get the halo. They automatically get the halo because you've now had a positive experience with me. So, and I gotta tell you, I've worked with a lot of men as clients. And I cannot right now, and I'm going through the file pretty quickly, I can't tell you that I've come across one that made me feel that I could not because I was a woman. And like I said, maybe it's because I chose early on not to pick up the baggage. Yep. Yes, ma'am. In the orange?
I want to pick up right where you left off. I want to pick up right where you left off. Women are horrible on women.
Ah.
Harder on each other.
Yeah.
Talk about that in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Almost every time I speak in front of a group of women, I get that question about women not supporting other women. And I feel strongly about that. You know, we all complained, especially as I came up through the ranks, about the Old Boys Network. And I feel that there is a seasoned, not old, but seasoned girls network, and that we cannot afford not to support other women. And in fact, I've also learned that the way to grow your power is to give it away. And I understand why there are some women that don't support other women, and because many folks who are my genre of age didn't have anybody to support them, and they went through it the hard way, and a lot of those women are bitter about it. And a lot of those women have what I call the fraternity mentality. Well, I had to go through the pledging process this way, and you have to do it this way as well. But I say, I understand no one supported you. I really feel sorry about that. Now get over it. Right? Because we cannot afford to let the next generation of leaders or even our peers go through the same things that we went through. We can't afford that. We'll never get anywhere as a gender if we do that. And as I said, you want to get powerful? Give your power away. Empower other people. You'd be surprised how that really grows your power in ways that you wouldn't even have imagined. Use your currency. If you got in the room, you deserve to be in the room. Nobody gave it to you. And if you're in the room, you have a responsibility to exercise your power, especially if you get to the decision-making table. Do not sit there and be quiet. You can't afford that. And if you want to see where your power gets dissipated, right there, how you lose it, don't exercise it. Don't use that currency. You've earned that currency. And the only way to grow it is to use it. And if you can use it on behalf of another woman, that's even better. So to your point about the support, get some other women in the room. Bring some other women on your floor. That's the way to make it happen so that you have the support. And oh, by the way, if you brought me, or, you know, as they say in the movies, she made me. If you make me, I'm forever loyal, right? And people ask me all the time, well, Carla, you must have a lot of people who ask you to mentor them. How do you decide? Well, I'll tell you how I decide. I decide based on whether or not I think they will do that for somebody else. You don't have to repay me. But are you going to be that person that's going to answer that phone at 7 o'clock in the morning like I took your call? Are you going to be that person that will take that call at 5:30 when I'm on the West Coast and you're about to walk in a meeting at 8:30 on the East Coast? If I think you're going to do that, I will mentor you all day long and give you everything that I have. because there will be a multiplier effect associated with that. And that is how we change this. That is how we change it. You be the woman that's using her power and watch how it works. And then people say, oh, you know, I don't want the boys to think that I'm only supporting a woman. Let them think that. Because if not you, then who? Right? Yes, ma'am.
Laying off the bat, have you, as an authentic woman, met another authentic woman? And y'all were like oil and water.
Sure, there have been women, oh, absolutely. There have been women that have a different point of view than I have, even about the things that we were just talking about. And I respect them for who they were. You will never hear me say something negative about another woman in public. I just don't believe in doing that. But absolutely, there are women who think about these things differently. But I choose to be that woman who's trying to be helpful. And I choose to be that example, hoping other people will follow mine. And that's how I handle it. Okay. Oh, Jeannie, that was a plant. Okay. Okay. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future. My life is worth the living just because my life is worth the living just. My life is worth the living just because he lives. Alrighty. Women in Investment Management, CFA Institute, thank you very much. Thank you.